What is going on, nerds? Today we are going to do an unboxing of the Biden $2 trillion infrastructure plan. So anybody who's watching this either live or on replay, you get major nerd points because I don't know who else on YouTube is going into details about the infra plan other than kind of little 140 character tweets. But you know, that's not how we roll up in here. We're going to get into the details, into the math, but before we do that, let's hear from Andrew.
Yo, there's no place to hide now that he's arrived. I'm saying he ain't playing now with this campaign. Bang, dang, is and
Hello, nerds! Hello, nerds! Nerds for humanity. My goodness, it's been a long time, nerds. Been busy at work, but I got good news for you. I'm taking a few days off from work this coming week for spring break to spend some time with family. But we might do some nerds live streams. So if you have topics that you want me to hit in the next few days, I'm guessing for sure we'll do an Andrew Yang mayoral race update. But, you know, if there's some national items you want to talk about, I also would like to do a deep dive on immigration reform. So if you know of any immigration experts, people who have published books about immigration, who have work in some immigration reform nonprofits, or who are academics who really know their stuff, let me know. I'd love to do a long-form interview with that person. But today, we are going to focus on the Biden infrastructure bill. So what's in it? What's not in it? We'll also look at what Trump did for infrastructure. Remember, Trump was claiming he was no one knows infrastructure better than Donald Trump. So we'll look at the history of his infrastructure accomplishments and what's the term, promises made, promises kept. And then if there's any time left over and you guys are still sticking around, we will maybe react to my favorite radical MAGA Twitter people, Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene, see what they're talking to their followers about, and you know what policy positions they're advocating, what details and evidence and logic they're using or not. Before we get into it, good morning from Northern California. Where are you nerds on the live stream joining from? Let me know in the chat, and I'll give you a quick shout out while we get started. So while I wait for that to come in, let's start. Oh, Jackalego! He is a member. Welcome, Jackalego. Hello, nerds. Oh, I have a new feature here. Lets me star it. I'm not sure what that does. Oh, it just sort of allows me to remember it. So I'm using some updated software, which is made possible by the Nerds for Humanity members. Jackalego is coming to us from Massachusetts, a state or commonwealth that I know well, having spent about 6 years of my life in the great state of Massachusetts, and then 4 years or 3 years just north of it in the great state of Maine. So hopefully the weather is starting to warm up over there. It is beautiful today in Northern California. Let's see what's today's weather. We have high taxes, but it will be what the hell? Come on, man. You would think it's easier. Should be easier for me to look up weather on a phone these days. And now it's like promoting. Okay, here we go. Oh, it's 58 degrees and it'll get to a high of 60 today. So, yeah, and a little bit of sunshine. All right, let's get into it. What is in this bill? Share, hopefully this works. Share Chrome. Oh yeah, it worked. Love it. Let's see if I can expand here. Will that work? Yes. I like it. I like it. Okay. This is from USA Today, who they often do good data visualization, so makes it work well for our live streams together. Oopsie daisy. There we go. Okay. So Joe Biden wants to spend $2 trillion on infrastructure and jobs. So let's look at 4 charts that show where the money will go. Maybe I can do full screen on this. View full screen. Oh, that is in full screen. Okay, whatever. Okay, first chart. Ooh, here we go. Let's make that a little smaller so we can see it. That's not working for me. God, Tom, you're rusty at this whole live streaming thing, huh? Okay, so it looks like, golly, what in the Sam Hill? 174 billion will be spent on electric vehicles, including a network of 500,000 EV stations. So that's a big deal. Let me see if I can open this in a... No, that won't let me do it. Okay. We'll just make it work. We have 80 billion for Amtrak repairs, improvements to existing routes, and expansion. So for those who like rail, basically the first 2 are huge. EV, electric vehicles, almost 200 billion, and 80 billion, almost 100 billion on trains. Then you have 115 billion on bridges, highways, roads, main streets that are in critical need of repair. 50 billion on climate change resiliency. 25 miscellaneous. 25 upgrading airports. 20 billion on road safety. 17 billion on coastal ports, ferries. 20 billion on connecting neighborhoods to historically cut off, and 85 billion for modernizing public transit. I mean, who wouldn't be supportive of this? These are all great things. If you are a country, do you want to be ready for electronic vehicles? Sorry, I keep saying electronic. Electric vehicles. Do you want a rail system that's modern? Do you want bridges, highways, and roads? Do you want to be able to hold up to climate change and climate disasters? Do you want modern airports, road safety, a more connected country, and public transit? Hell yeah. So this is one of those things where you got to wonder if Republicans can't support this. Like, what are we gonna do, man? Like, what are you gonna be opposed to? Like, these are things that are good for the economy. They create jobs, and they pay off for multiple generations. You think about like our current national highway system costs a ton of money, but look at where we would be without it. And if you're not sure, you should try traveling through Eastern Europe. Or many parts of Asia where they have crappy infrastructure. Frankly, parts of Italy, where the infra is just not there. And it's not surprising that a lot of countries struggle to compete in the global marketplace. I'm particularly excited about the electric vehicle since, GM and I think Ford have decided to go all electric in the next, 5 years or so. We're going to need that infra, and that's going to create a boom of innovation and jobs. So that's exciting. Then there is quality of life at home. So you've got retrofit 2 million homes and commercial properties, expand high-speed broadband, and I'm guessing that would include rural, 100 billion for high-speed broadband expansion, 100 billion for upgrading and building public schools, 100 billion for eliminating lead pipes and modernizing drinking water, wastewater, and stormwater systems, 40 billion public housing, 20 billion VA hospital and clinics, plug orphan oil and gas wells and clean up abandoned mines, clean energy and sustainability accelerator, child care facilities in high needs areas, community college infrastructure, federal buildings modernization, new workers in public lands and waters, improved electric grid. This is great, man. We're going to have like America 2.0 with this thing. I'm loving it. Okay, then there is caregivers for elderly and disabled. Whoa, 400 billion. That's a big bill there. That is to improve access to quality, affordable home or community-based care for elderly people and people with disabilities, expand Medicaid, boost pay for care workers who are disproportionately women of color and typically earn $12 an hour. Well, that's an interesting number there. In the bill, it's got 400 billion for caregivers for elderly and disabled, and then 100 billion for electric grid, and it had 200 billion for electric vehicle network, EV stations, 500,000 EV stations. And then another 100 billion for trains. So there's almost as much on the caregivers as there is on the traditional transportation infra. Then you got research, development, and manufacturing. So you got 52 billion supporting rural manufacturing and clean energy, 48 billion for workforce development infrastructure. Okay, now this is where if you're in the Yang Gang, you get a little bit concerned because you're like, man, just give people cash. We don't need a bunch of job training programs. Let people decide and maybe purchase that from the market. Infra and laboratories, climate crisis, domestic industrial capacity. That's interesting. 50 billion. If I'm in a negotiation, I might be, and I'm sort of channeling my former fiscal conservative side. I'm like, oh, I don't know. This one feels like a little bit of extra government for me, but whatever. 50 billion for a new office to monitor industrial capacity. 46 billion for clean energy manufacturing. 30 billion for R&D for small businesses. I would just give people cash again. 20 billion innovation hub. I'd give people cash. Okay, I'm all for 30 billion to prevent future pandemics. I mean, that's something like we all know that we're feeling better about COVID as more people get vaccinated. I think a lot of us believe that this is sort of like going to be the new normal. So 10 billion for R&D at HBCUs. Dislocated workers program, I would just give cash. New National Science Foundation. Okay, maybe. I don't know. Okay, so I'm going to be honest with you guys. For this 300 billion in research, development, and manufacturing, I would probably say, you know what? You could give everyone $1,000 every probably every adult $1,500, and you might spur more workforce development and economic growth than a lot of this stuff. But, you know, we can debate that. That is $300 billion. So that is about 15% of the Biden plan is this R&D and manufacturing. So you got 300 for R&D and manufacturing. You've got 400 for care. That's 700. And then you've got 650 for a lot of, I would call it home infrastructure, like electric grid, clean energy, public housing. And then you've got 600 for transportation. So if I were a Republican, I would be like, yeah, no brainer, 100% behind the 600 for transportation, 100% behind the 650 for home infrastructure. So that get us to 1.2 trillion. I would like to explore this 400 billion for the elderly and consider a basic income for elderly people. That might be better, in my opinion. And then for this R&D and manufacturing, that's the one where I'm like, that's a lot of offices and programs and stuff. So I might just take the 300 billion from this R&D and 400 billion from elderly, and take that 700 billion and turn it into basic income subsidies for people to spend as they want, and then the other 1.2 trillion in home infra and transportation, I would go big on those. So that is a little bit of a quick overview of of the bill. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. Call me Phil. St. Louis in the house. Welcome, sir. Seton wants to know, why are Republicans against this? Yeah, I think there's 3 reasons, if I had to guess, but I'd be curious what you guys think in the chat. The first reason is they just don't like Biden, and they don't want to. If they spent all last year trying to convince everybody that if you elect Joe Biden, 3 things will happen, right? This is what the Republicans promised. They said, number 1, the stock market would crash the day after Biden wins the election. I think the quote from Donald J. Trump was, say goodbye to your 401ks, to your entire retirement savings. The markets will crash. Investors will pull their money out because they're afraid of the radical socialist Biden-Harris takeover of the economy. Meanwhile, the stock market has been setting new records and been doing quite well. And we're not hearing that because Biden doesn't brag every time the market sets a new record, because generally in a growing market, it's always setting a new record. I think a lot of Trump supporters forgot about that. It's sort of like every new iPhone is the fastest iPhone ever. It's not that big of a deal to set a new record. That's what markets are supposed to do over time. At any rate, so they don't like it because they were trying to convince all their followers that Biden would be terrible and he's a communist. The second thing is they might have legitimate concerns about so much spending. I mean, this infra bill, I think, is around the same size as Trump's tax cuts. So let's see. How much did Trump tax cuts cost? So it looks like Trump's tax cuts were about $2 trillion. And it's basically the same. It's almost the same cost as this Biden infra bill. And so it's an interesting question. Like, if you supported cutting taxes on the rich and corporations that were making, you know, sometimes hundreds of billions of dollars, and that was okay, and that reduced government revenue, and any sane economist would say, like, no, it's not going to pay for itself. You're going to get more growth, but you're not going to get an extra $2 trillion in tax revenues of growth. So if Trump supporters were so fine with him slashing taxes, then why are they opposed to spending the same amount of money on programs like roads, bridges, electric grid, high-speed internet for rural areas? Like, why wouldn't you support that? Modernizing schools? Because you could argue, like, those for sure will pay you back. And then, the MAGA people will always say, oh, I'm all for freedom. I want companies to do whatever they want. We should just, like, unleash the innovation of the American job creators. Well, then why don't you just cut taxes down to 1%? Like, at some point, the math doesn't line up, right? You have to collect some taxes. And so, at any rate, so I think the Republicans are against this primarily because they don't want to admit that Biden's being reasonable. And two is maybe it kind of begs the question, like, why didn't Trump do this? Because Trump said when he was running the first time that nobody knows infrastructure and building roads, bridges, and railways better than Donald J. Trump. I mean, he also said nobody respects women more than Donald J. Trump, and he's the least racist person you'll ever see. But he did say nobody knows infrastructure, and he and I think his son-in-law, Jared, they were talking about big infrastructure kind of historic things. So I think the Republicans are against this because it kind of undermines what they were saying about why Biden was so terrible. It highlights that Trump didn't do anything for the most part for infra. And then the third is there might be some legitimate budget concerns. So, at any rate, that's my theory. Looks like Elizabeth agrees and definitely remembers Trump saying those crazy things. Wait a minute. Elizabeth Norris from New York Post YouTube post fame. Elizabeth Norris, were you in the New York Post? If you were, congratulations. But let's take a look. Speaking of Trump, you guys we could take a look at what Trump actually did, because maybe we're being hard on the guy, and maybe he did more than we're giving him credit for. So luckily, let's see if this will work. We have the ability to look and see what the man did. Okay. This is from Bloomberg. Not exactly a, communist left-wing publication. And this one is about how Trump's $1 trillion in infra pledge added up. Oh, so Trump had promised to spend $1 trillion on infra. A mixed record, it says. Trump campaign on $1 trillion infra plan. We are going to fix our inner cities, rebuild our highways, bridges, tunnels, airports, schools, and hospitals. And we will put millions of people to work as we rebuild it. He referred to himself as the builder president. He held multiple infrastructure weeks calling for investments. Let's see. The subject. Okay, so according to this guy Adler, the subject just never seemed to be a priority it indicated it would be. The $1 trillion package boiled down to a series of White House budget sketches proposing to use $200 billion as an incentive for private investors to put up the other $800 billion. We believe this will be a great return. They had a press release. The Trump campaign had a press release on a referendum in Nashville of $5 billion, which is less than $1 trillion. Brookings Institution says, we will look back on these 4 years as a missed opportunity. The Trump administration has been a major letdown for nearly all state and local officials and advocates. Yeah. One prominent deflated dream was the Gateway Project, a $30 billion plan to repair Amtrak under the Hudson River. It ranks high on the list of national infra needs. And Trump administration was supportive of it, but they stopped coming to project meetings. Okay, so if you stop going to meetings, it's hard to be supportive of things. Probably, I would have to imagine, because New York had a Democratic governor and senators, and I'm guessing, if I had to bet, that little Donald was mad about that. The administration punished cities that were trying to advance investments the White House described. It delayed the release of $1.4 billion in capital investment grants for urban transport. It delayed in 2019, causing sponsors to withdraw their request for funding or cancel plans, according to the GAO, the Government Accountability Office. If you're a smaller community that wants to get something done, but then a year passes, your costs exceed your resources. We just stopped applying because we knew that urban areas weren't being favored. So under Trump, looks like more spending was going to rural. They increased the share of funding to rural significantly over urban. Okay. Now, you could argue they were just trying to catch up, but who knows why Trump wanted to reduce spending to urban areas. Let's see. So here you have a $5.8 million multi-purpose transport center in Wisconsin, a main bridge in Kennebec County. Yeah, these are like a few million here, a few million there. Oh, of course, there was the border wall. So rather than building, the Trump administration proved adept at demolishing, scrapping environmental protections, rolling back fuel efficiency standards, and withdrawing from the Paris Climate Accords. But the construction project for which the president is most likely remembered is the U.S.-Mexico border wall. 360 miles of barrier to replace existing fencing. And it has cost U.S. taxpayers 5 times more per mile than in previous administrations. And it falls short of Trump's campaign promises, including that Mexico would pay for this wall. Yeah, so basically, Trump really kind of sucked when it came to getting anything done on infrastructure. Yeah. That's the TLDR if I had to give one. So, what are you going to do, man? I mean, I'm guessing if you were talking to a Trump supporter, they would just say, well, you know, what would they say? How would they defend Trump's infrastructure? I think they would say, well, the wall. He did the 360 miles of barrier. But, you know, I don't know if that barrier wall is $1 trillion in infra investments that he planned, because that would be a very expensive wall. And he would talk about how our airports needed up modernizing. I mean, I'll just ask you guys, in the last 4 years, did you see airports, roads, bridges being modernized? Electrification, high-speed broadband? I don't think that happened. And that's exactly what Biden is proposing. So hopefully the House and the Senate give him that support. Mike CK, another member, is saying, hey, It's always a party line. If you show some plans from Biden to Republicans without revealing whose plans they are, and some will agree with Biden's and turn around and go against it once they find out it's from Biden. Yeah, this is the equivalent of many Republicans were in favor of healthcare exchanges where health insurance plans had to compete against each other, and requirements for individuals to take responsibility and all have some basic level of insurance. And they were all in support of children remaining on their parents' health care plans, and for health insurers not to be able to kick you off or reject you due to pre-existing conditions. That all sounds good to Republicans until you tell them that, oh, well, Obama supports that too. And then suddenly it's some terrible thing. So, in summary, the Biden plan, $2 trillion, about 1.5 is for transportation and home modernization, and then another half is for job training and care for elderly. I would imagine we're all going to agree that transportation and home modernization, non-negotiable. Even Republicans should support that, and maybe they negotiate around the job training stuff and the elderly care. Maybe the compromise is, rather than creating all these programs, you spend that on a basic income pilot, because that $500 billion you could get to, like, $200 a month for every adult citizen for a year, or you could probably do like $400 or $500 a month for every elderly adult, on top of what they get from Social Security. But obviously, I'm a big basic income fan. Now, next, if you guys want, is I can do a little reaction to some of my favorite radical MAGA leaders, thought leaders, the brain trusts of the radical MAGA, Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene. But before I do that, if you found this unboxing of the infrastructure plan useful and educational, and you think people would value it to kind of get into the actual numbers and look at the details of the plan versus just saying that they're opposed to it or for it, please remember to like and share, because these nerds live streams, they're not that popular. This is not like watching, cars crash on YouTube or cute pets or gaming videos. Like, this is a little bit of a niche type of content. So we need all the likes and shares we can get. Any rate, Think Harder is saying, no, don't give Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene any more airtime. I mean, I'm not trying to promote them for sure, but I think it is important to understand the intellectual. Oh, Brett Isaac donated through Super Chat. Brett, let me get my little bell. Thank you, Brett Isaac. I appreciate it. As a reminder, all of this money goes to paying for this fancy streaming software, which is pretty clear, if I may say so myself. And then our podcast hosting fees. By the way, if you listen to audio podcasts, I put a lot of our Nerds live streams audio on that. And also helps us kind of promote and invest more in new tools and more content. No, you cannot, Ryan. My son just asked to join the live stream, but he is not allowed because we're breaking down data here, and he just wants to get access to that Super Chat money, because sometimes when he comes on, I tell him, hey, if you help me run the live stream, I'll give you a percentage of the Super Chat to try and encourage entrepreneurial behavior. But let's first, we will get into some of the MAGA Twitter people, because I think it's important to understand where they're coming from and try and understand the other kind of half of the country. But before we do that, let me just, oh, wait a minute. Let's see. Yeah, so Mike CK is like, yeah, I don't know what's going on. That's why I follow these people, and it's important to know where they're coming from. So we're going to go into that. Before we do that, let me just give a quick thank you to the people who make this content possible. Obviously, in addition to Brett Isaac, who just gave us a super chat, we have our ongoing Nerds for Humanity members. So I just want to give a shout out to them. We have to give a shout out to, we'll start with our VPs. And by the way, we have SVP and EVP levels available. And if you do join at that highest level, every time I do a live stream, if you have like a one-sentence message you want me to read out to the entire audience, I'm happy to do that, as long as obviously it's appropriate and won't get me in trouble. But at the VP level, currently the highest level, we have VLAM, JM Sap, Fat Lamb, Kristen Slevin, Laura Lane, Patrick Dunn, Mindful Skeptics, Soldier One, and Bike. And Soldier One and Bike had started out as lower level members and then recently upgraded to the VP level. So we thank you for that. And if you're thinking about becoming a member, just click that join button. Then the next level is the hardcore. And we have Mike Chang, Gene Lim, David, Tracy Mesa, DK, Phoenix Congress, Jekkalego, who I think is in this chat or was earlier, Kirsch, Thiva, Mr. History Fan, Byram Hess, Mona, Susan, Yang Den, Robert, Dean L, Stat Nerd, Galessa, Jay Parent, Tony Perella, Jay Bryan, Annalisa, Vivian, and Dana. Okay, and then at the entry level, the verified nerd level, oh yeah, Mike CK, VP is more money. Basically, the more money you give, the earlier you get the shout out. And then if you're SVP, that's a new perk, which is I'll just read out a message from you to the audience. Mike CK saying, I'm staying lower level until I get my UBI. I don't blame you. If you just, whatever you can do, it's much appreciated, and it allows us to just produce more content. So verified nerds, we have Helen, Lisa, Sugar, Albert, Brandon, Yes, Brian, Peter, Arez, Your Mammon, Sophia, Jedwiga, Gail, Shake, Mike, Doris, Emerald, Nell, Lori, Ben, Roger, Lisa, Christina, Vaughn, Rasta, Richard, Jessica, James, Jalopy, Emma, Spirited, Hui, Steven, Ira, Shoni, Philip, Jameson, Doctor, William, Karen, Monica, Alex, Ardent, Mai, Semery, Brittany, Clyde, Want to See More, Sasha, and I think Sasha might be our newest member overall. So let me just give a quick shout out to our latest members, and then we're going to react to the MAGA people. Hold on. Apply, and then we'll say total time as member. Reverse order. Oh, Flavio has become a member. Flavio Lira. Welcome, Flavio. All right. Thank you, Flavio. Hardcore. So Flavio Lira is our newest member. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Sasha Alexander joined 6 days ago. Vivian, 27 days ago. Dana, 27 days ago. And Want to See More, 27 days ago. All less than a month old. Flavio is about 10 seconds old. So welcome. All right. Now, shall we get on to reacting to the Moggins? So let me show you. This is a woman by the name of Lauren Boebert, who is elected to the U.S. Congress, and in Colorado, the federal national office, the United States Congress. Okay. So what is she talking about? She's raising money to fight back about how Democrats are trying to fundamentally change America. What is she saying? I'm really curious. Hold on. See if we can. Oh no, I don't think the audio is working. Well, unfortunately, I can't get the system audio to play for us today. We'll have to do it another time. But let's see what she's talking about. She says an hour ago, the real villains of 2021 will be woke corporations. Every Republican-led state should throw down the gauntlet and fight for the people they represent. Now, there was a time where I'm pretty sure the MAGA people were all about capitalism. And they were all about job creators, giving companies less taxes, less regulations, and more freedom to operate. And otherwise, you're a communist. But now it says every Republican-led state should throw down the gauntlet and fight for the people they represent. So maybe if it's Hobby Lobby, they should be allowed to do whatever they want. They're a private business. But if it's like, you know, who was it? Was it somebody pulled some professional sports league that pulled some games out of Georgia? That's not allowed because that's anti-Republican voting suppression. So it's, I mean, this is like classic hypocrisy, basically. Like, there's no consistency. You can't be screaming about capitalism and freedom. Yeah, thanks, Mike CK. It was at MLB. Yeah, the All-Star game. Thank you, Mike CK. You can't be screaming about freedom and capitalism and then telling every Republican-led state to throw down the gauntlet and fight for the people against these corporations. Like, are you for private enterprise or not? And if you're for it, but you want to regulate it, that's fine. But then you can't scream freedom one day and then throw down the gauntlet and fight for the people the second day. Like, it doesn't. My view would be corporations have an important role to play. They must play by the rules. The ones who are making tons of money should be paying way more in taxes and contributing to the rest of society because they benefit from the infrastructure and the countries in which they operate. And it's a very balanced view. It's like, we're not saying corporations should do whatever they want, but we're also not saying like government should take over corporations. But with Lauren Boebert, it depends on the day of the week. One day it's like, don't tell private businesses what to do. I don't want to have my employees wear masks. I want to spread COVID all over my restaurant. And then, oh, wait a minute. The MLB's moving the All-Star game out of Georgia. You're woke. You're a woke corporation. You know, that's some BS, in my opinion. Yeah, she even talks about it 3 hours ago. MLB caved to the woke mob based on a false narrative and announced it is moving the All-Star game and draft out of Atlanta. Yet somehow MLB thinks it's okay to play games in Cuba and funnel money to a corrupt government that murders its own people and denies basic human rights. I love how, like, Lauren Boebert often talks about we need to be America first. We don't need to worry about other countries. But suddenly she is a huge advocate for Cuban government reform and corruption. And now she cares deeply about that. Oh, why? Because she can find a perceived inconsistency in the MLB. I don't think there's anything inconsistent there. I think the MLB is saying it's in Cuba's interest and in America's interest for more collaboration between the two countries. So sports is a great way to build more understanding. I mean, didn't her president go to North Korea and they said that he should get a Nobel Prize? So if the MLB wants to play some games in Cuba, that's fine. And if they want to pull their all-star game and draft out of Atlanta because Atlanta made it illegal to like give people water waiting to vote and tried to restrict the number of hours that they can vote and restrict the number of ways they can vote, that's also up to the MLB. So I don't know, but that's what Lauren's saying. What else is she saying? Sources are identifying the capital attacker for today as a follower of the Nation of Islam. Did the FBI or DHS know this person was a threat, or were they too busy doing woke training to actually bother with it? So the shooter in Georgia was a deeply religious Christian. Did Lauren Boebert say that sources are identifying that the Atlanta attacker for today as a follower of Christ? This is obvious from it was also obvious from his reported Facebook page. So I don't know, man. It seems like these MAGA people basically are walking examples of confirmation bias. It's like, oh, there was a shooting or a killing, and if the assailant was Christian, then let's not talk about his religion. Maybe we'll talk about his mental health. He's mentally ill. But if the killer was Muslim, then let's talk about how he's a follower of the Nation of Islam. So it seems like you're always mentally ill if you're from one demographic group, and you're always like a radical terrorist if you're from another. This is just sort of really like we see this over and over again, that if you switch the names, like as an example for this capital attacker from today or yesterday, if he were a Christian, I'm pretty sure Lauren would not have talked about that, right? I'm pretty sure she would say, oh, thank God those policemen had guns. And that's an example of defending the Second Amendment. Like, they'll always take any situation and like twist it to their worldview, their narrative, versus saying like, hey, let's just look at this pattern of violence and let's think about the root cause. And if you ask me, the root cause is like a deep and growing anxiety and tribalism and polarization and divisiveness, and anything we can do to kind of put an economic floor out there so people don't feel as desperate, but also increasing understanding of all groups' perspectives and trying to solve problems versus spending all your energy just sort of being snarky. Like, Lauren Boebert's Twitter feed is very snarky. So it's like, oh, or were they too busy doing woke training? Like, you know what? A policeman just died. And now you're kind of turning this into your little woke movement. Or like, oh, the MLB is the woke mob, and the woke corporations, and the woke, and the woke. It's like, our biggest problem is not the woke movement. The biggest problem facing this country is a pandemic, increasing income inequality, climate change that's affecting everybody's way of life, and the fact that the next generation is increasingly anxious about their prospects. I don't think whether or not like someone uses some term or can still use some mascot for their sports league, like that is not defending the old ways is not like the biggest thing that real people care about. I think real people care about their family, their future, and they want to have their kids to be healthy and thriving. Any rate, no amount of gun laws would have stopped today's attack. Will Democrats take note of that, please? Oh my God. This is like the anti-maskers saying, hey, I know someone who wore a mask and they still got COVID. Yeah, that's life, man. Nothing is perfect. No gun reform is going to remove all crime in America. So when you find a crime that doesn't involve a gun, it doesn't mean don't do any gun reform. Like, we have to be able to think a little bit more deeply. And it's not this black and white world where it's like, oh, you're either pro Second Amendment or you're trying to confiscate every last gun in America. Like, really? How is it that you are in Congress writing our laws? All right, so that's Lauren. You guys want to go into, we'll do a little Marjorie Taylor Greene. Let me know if you're enjoying this reaction stuff, because I'm getting a little worked up. I don't know, but maybe this is not what you came here for. I'll keep an eye on the chat. Let's see. Marjorie Taylor Greene. This individual is also in the United States Congress, and she is from the state of Georgia. And let's see what she's talking about. She is saying, retweet if you still have real Donald Trump's back, okay? And then she's saying, what the hell is this? The Israeli embassy in New York just admitted attempting to extort a congressman. Interesting. She's saying the MLB issue brought together all of the factions within the Republican Party last night. We now have an issue to get behind and fight together. Corporate communism. I don't understand what that term means. My understanding of communism is when the state owns the means of production. So if you're mad at corporations for pulling out of Georgia, and you're anti-communism, then you have a right to be mad, but you shouldn't, I don't know why you would call it corporate communism. Those companies are acting on their own volition. They have decided to pull their business and put it in other places. If you're trying to bring together all factions within the Republican Party to tie the hands or take control of companies, like, aren't you the communist? Anyway, so let's see what else she's saying. Now back of those pull-ups. For all of those who criticism of butterfly pull-ups, I challenge you to tweet your pull-up video and tag me. Okay. I'm not sure why. Why is she tweeting herself doing pull-ups? Okay. But that has 24,000 views and 2,000 likes. This week, I introduced the Fire Fauci Act. Fauci isn't addressing health. He's destroying freedom. I don't know. Like, if you had to get medical advice, would you trust Marjorie Taylor Greene or Dr. Anthony Fauci? With all the data about obesity and COVID, Fauci are pushing the COVID vaccines to be mandated for our survival instead of addressing obesity to help people. Well, I would love to hear what she wants to do to address obesity, because I do think obesity is an issue. I think it's something like 1/3 of American adults are overweight, and I think a significant portion of those are obese. That's a huge problem in the U.S. But what would she want? What would she propose to do? Because if you start talking about taking like more preventative health or incenting healthier behavior, you might get accused of supporting Obamacare and being a socialist. So I don't know if MJT or MTG wants to go there, but maybe she is. Maybe Marjorie Taylor Greene is suddenly supporting public health. Let's see. Oh, so she's saying the closed gyms have increased weight gain. Uh-huh. I don't know if she realizes that 500,000 people died of COVID. So if we had no mitigations, that number probably would have been in the millions. But I guess if you opened the gyms, no one would die. I don't know. Okay, this is Marjorie Taylor Greene saying, this is my COVID protection. So she's been very skeptical and encouraging her followers to not get vaccinated. And instead, she's saying we should make America healthy again. And then posted this video. And so, first of all, that's very impressive. She looks very strong. And I think this is some kind of like CrossFit form. This this kind of swinging of your back. But I don't think that is COVID protection. I mean, I think, of course, healthier people will have a stronger immune system. But I don't think that's a replacement for getting a vaccine. But this is what the MAGA world is talking about. So I figured I just share a little bit about what the intellectual epicenter of the radical MAGA are talking about. They seem to be very big on anti-woke, anti-corporations, anti-Fauci, anti-vaccination. And for some reason, none of them are talking about the infrastructure plan. But yeah, that's the deal. And Dennis, he makes up a good point that Trump was secretly got vaccinated while he was moving out of the White House, even though he had contracted COVID and had, what was he saying? I mean, Trump said he got the hydroxychloroquine that was going to prevent him from getting it. Then he got it, and then he had some advanced treatment, experimental treatment, was put on oxygen, and then he got the Pfizer vaccine, I think, secretly. And then he had Melania get it too, even though she had contracted COVID and is considerably younger than him and not obese like he is. So I'm not sure how the MAGA people reconcile that their great leader is a big fan of getting the vaccine. The dude got the vaccine after already having had COVID, and he got his wife to get it after she had had COVID, and he got earliest access available on top of all like an army of doctors treating him when he caught it the first time. And so I don't know why they're so anti-vaccine now. Any rate. Oh, Elizabeth Norris makes a good point. Yeah. He also voted by mail. Yes, he was a mail-in voter. I mean, he also is married to, I think two of his three wives are immigrants, right? Wasn't Melania from a very poor Eastern European country? And wasn't Ivana from the former Soviet part of Czechoslovakia? I'm pretty sure. And then doesn't Mar-a-Lago employ tons of undocumented workers for their landscaping, housekeeping, and service staff? So expecting consistency from the MAGA people, they just love Trump. And he could do, like, he's right. He could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue, and they would say, well, he's just demonstrating the right to bear arms, right? At any rate, well, first of all, I just want to thank everyone for joining the stream. And Brett Isaac, thank you for the super chat. And also, big thank you to our newest member, Flavio Lira. So you guys are awesome. I will be back tomorrow for another live stream. Let me see if I have I think I already have a topic picked out for tomorrow's stream. Let me just check my calendar. So for tomorrow, oh, it's Easter Sunday tomorrow. For tomorrow, I think we're going to do a update on the Andrew Yang NYC mayoral race. We'll do betting odds, internet trends, money raising, news coverage, that kind of thing. But before you go, please thumbs up, share, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye, nerds. Fading to black.